Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Jaeger-LeCoultre Polaris. This watch is available from Chronex.com for €7,620. You can purchase the watch from Chronex.com online, or alternatively in person at their boutiques. All their watches are Chronex certified original by their in-house watchmakers, and all their watches are covered by the Chronex 24-month warranty. So firstly, I'll show you the warranty card that comes with the watch, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So this is the international warranty card that comes with the watch. It's a brand new unworn 2021 piece, and as you can see, the date of purchase was the 18th of September 2021. If you purchase the watch from Chronex.com, it will come with the Jaeger-LeCoultre watch box, the outer box, the owner's instruction manual, and of course this international warranty. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, this is the Jaeger-LeCoultre Polaris. We have a 41mm case diameter, we have a 47.4mm lug-to-lug measurement, a thickness of 11.2mm, and a lug width of 21mm. The H-link bracelet tapers from 21mm at the lugs down to the 4-button push deploying clasp. As you can see, the 4-button push deployant is signed to a high standard with the Jaeger-LeCoultre brand logo. Good firm resistance to the 4-button pushes to the deployant. As you can see, it pops open very easily. Flawless mirror polishing to the top side, underside and flanks, and also the centre section is mirror polished throughout to a absolutely incredible standard. This is one of the best executed 4-button push deployant clasps I've seen, and it really is a testament to Jaeger-LeCoultre's quality of making bracelets and clasps. It's one of the best quality bracelets and clasps I've seen. It closes with a nice positive click to both halves of the deployants, and it's very satisfying to use, and it's just very aesthetically pleasing. Brass satin finish to the top side and underside, which contrasts with the flawless mirror polishing to the flanks of the deployants. So, with regards to the rest of the specification, we have a double dome sapphire crystal with clear AR coating. The clear anti-reflective coating on the underside of the double dome sapphire crystal does an excellent job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver applied indices and the silver baton hands. The large Arabic numerals are perfectly symmetrical, 12, 9, 6 and 3. They are fully loomed with C3 superluminova, as are the baton hands and the other applied indices. One of my favourite aspects of the piece is the inner rotating bezel. So let's test the bezel action. The top crown activates the inner rotating bezel, and it's bidirectional and it's friction based rather than a ratcheting mechanism, so that does take some getting used to if you're used to external rotating diver bezels, which are 120 click. Personally, I would prefer if the resistance to the rotating bezel was firmer, because there is a risk if one inadvertently brushes past the top crown. As you can see, one could accidentally knock it out of position. So I think there's room for improvement on this, and I would like to see Jaeger-LeCoultre overhaul the inner rotating bezel from being bidirectional friction based, which is silky smooth as you can see. I would like them to introduce a 120 click unidirectional ratcheting mechanism, because I think it would make it more functional, and I would prefer the resistance of a 120 click ratcheting mechanism as per conventional dive bezels which are external, because that would avoid the risk of accidentally brushing against the top crown, as you can see, and accidentally rotating the bezel clockwise or anti-clockwise out of position. But having said that, the resistance feels smooth all the way through the 360 degrees of rotation, both clockwise and anti-clockwise. And it is an absolute pleasure to operate. There's no play whatsoever in the crown, and one can feel the resistance both clockwise and anti-clockwise to the inner rotating bezel, which has a convex profile which gives it a 3D effect underneath the double dome sapphire crystal. So really, I would just like to see them improve it with a ratcheting mechanism, but needless to say, because it's bidirectional, there's no issue with alignment. One can perfectly align the triangle at 12 o'clock with the 12 o'clock Arabic numerals on the dial. The lower crown is for setting the time, so let's test the crown action. Now, it may come as a surprise to you, because this is a dive piece. It has a push-pull crown rather than the conventional screw-down crown one would expect. It provides an effective hermetic seal to 100 metres of water resistance. Knurled finish, solid stainless steel, and signed with the Jaeger-LeCoultre brand emblem, as is the top crown, as you can see, polished to a flawless mirror finish as one would expect. So in the closed position, one can manually wind the movement, which is the caliber 898E/1, and one can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up to its maximum 40-hour power reserve. Absolutely silky smooth to manually wind, and the benefit of it being a push-pull crown is one doesn't have to unscrew it in order to top up the power reserve. One can manually wind it in the closed position. Pulling it out to the first click position is the final click position on the crown. There's no date complication, so there isn't a phantom date setting position. It just has one click on the crown and it hacks the movement. As you can see, looking at the second hand, I have now hacked the movement and stopped the second hand dead. So it is possible to set the caliber 898E/1 precisely to the second. Silky smooth, both clockwise and anti-clockwise. Absolute pleasure to set the time. It's got a nice firm resistance to the gearing, which I like. It feels like a good solid movement. But I would personally prefer if the crown was screw-down crown rather than push-pull, because that could increase the hermetic seal to 200 meters or 300 meters of water resistance. Really, 100 meters and a push-pull crown is disappointing, bearing in mind that this is a high-tier price point piece at €7,620. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. If you look at the second hand, it begins to sweep around the dial once again. So the crown is very well executed, but really I think it could be further enhanced if they upgraded it to a screw-down crown and increased the water resistance. So I'll show you the case back, which is very well executed. The case back is a screwed down case back. As you can see, it has 4 screws around the circumference, and this provides an effective hermetic seal to 100 meters of water resistance. The center section is glazed with sapphire crystal. So we have double dome sapphire crystal with AR coating in the front of the piece and flat sapphire crystal in the glazing of the exhibition caseback. The screw down exhibition caseback does a good job of displaying the movement use, which is the caliber 898E/1. So it's an in-house caliber made by Jaeger-LeCoultre, beautifully decorated with blued screws, and also coats de Genève finishing on the bridges, and also the skeletonized rotor features the Jaeger-LeCoultre brand logo, and it also has coats de Genève finishing to it. So the finishing, the decoration of the caliber 898E/1 is 10 out of 10. It's outstanding. Beautiful engraving to it to a high standard, which is also fully gilded, so it's a gorgeous movement to look at, and it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. But however, I would prefer to see a conventional screw-down exhibition caseback rather than using these 4 flathead screws, and I would prefer to see the caseback thickened in order to provide an effective hermetic seal of 200 meters or 300 meters, as per the industry standard for dive pieces. Really, 100 meters of water resistance is disappointing at this price point, so I would prefer to see both a screw-down crown and also screw-down caseback used rather than this design with the 4 screws around the circumference. Now if you look closely at the engraving of the screw-down exhibition caseback, you can see that over here where my thumb is, it has 1000 hours control engraved, which is part of the specification. So I'll explain what that is. In 1992, Jaeger-LeCoultre introduced 1000 hour control testing, and that is very rigorous testing. They test the movement in 6 positions, and they also test the watch under various temperatures, and they also test the watch and the movement for shock impact damage. So they subject the watch and the movement to various temperatures and check the accuracy of the watch when it's at different temperatures. They also subject it to shock damage and test that the movement and the watch is shock resistant. It still performs within accuracy limits. And they test it for 1000 hours, which is 6 weeks. And that actually exceeds COSC chronometer certification. COSC observed movements after casing for 3 weeks, so 1000 hours is 6 weeks. Jaeger-LeCoultre test their watches for double the length of time that COSC test movements after casing. So it's very rigorous and very thorough testing. So this Polaris has been through 1000 hours of control test, and the quality control therefore is outstanding. So with regards to the bracelet, it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. The H-Link bracelet is finished to the highest standard I have seen. This really is top tier quality finishing. Beautiful lustre to the brushed satin finish centre links, which contrasts with the flawless mirror polishing to the outer H-links. As you can see, the flanks to the H-Link bracelet are also mirror polished to a flawless standard. It's just absolutely incredible quality finishing. This is the kind of bracelet finishing one would expect to see on a Holy Trinity piece. When I'm talking about Holy Trinity, I'm referring to Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet and Vacheron Constantin respectively, and really the Jaeger-LeCoultre Polaris is finished to Holy Trinity level. It really is top tier. This is the kind of finishing to a bracelet one would expect to see on a piece costing in excess of €20,000. So to get this quality of finishing on a bracelet at €7,620 is a credit to Jaeger-LeCoultre. Right, so I'll give you a wrist shots and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now I haven't sized the bracelet, and I'm pleased to report that it does just fit my 8-inch wrist with all the links in the H-link bracelet. But however, I like to wear my bracelets loose, as you'll know from my previous review, so for comfort I would prefer if this had an additional 1 or 2 links in order for me to be able to slip an index finger underneath the 4-button push to point clasp at all times, which is the correct sizing method. But I can confirm it will fit my 8-inch wrist, as you can see. So really the maximum this H-link bracelet will fit is 7.5 inches, but if you're a collector with a 6 to 7-inch wrist, it will fit you with no difficulty whatsoever. Now my favourite aspect of the proportions of this piece is it is only 11.2mm thick, and as you can see, looking at the curved undercut of the case and the curved profile of the lugs, it's a very snug fit. It's an incredibly well balanced piece. It feels perfectly balanced between the bracelet, which is 21mm and tapers, and the 41mm head of the piece. They have got the proportions of this piece done to perfection. As you'll know from my previous reviews, I consider 48mm lug to lug measurement to be the sweet spot. This is very close to perfection at 47.4mm lug to lug measurement. So 11.2mm thickness is the kind of thickness one would expect with a manual wind, alternatively a quartz powered piece. Usually with automatic pieces, due to having a rotor on the underside of the movement, they need to be circa 13mm. So to get a movement in a case and only at 11.2mm is just incredible with a double dome sapphire crystal, because the double dome sapphire crystal adds significant thickness. It's taller than a flat sapphire crystal would be. Now if you look at the symmetry of the dial, the applied indices with the silver applied Arabic numerals and the baton hands, the legibility, the functionality is outstanding. Also like the applied silver Jaeger-LeCoultre brand emblem at 12 o'clock, and I like the fact that the dial isn't over-branded with unnecessary text or specification. It simply says Jaeger-LeCoultre at 12 o'clock and then automatic at 6 o'clock, just the right amount of information. The convex profile to the inner rotating bezel adds interest. It gives it a 3D effect, and it's absolutely gorgeous to view the dial through the double dome sapphire crystal, which has a slight lip which projects above the mirror polished bezel. The mirror polished bezel is very low profile, polished to a flawless standard as one would expect, and it's just absolutely gorgeous the way the bezel and the double dome sapphire crystal catches the light. The clear AR coating is some of the best I've seen, and it really does do an excellent job of reducing the glare of the applied indices and the baton hands, which are mirror polished to a flawless finish. So it's a good looking piece. The comfort level is outstanding, the feel good factor is outstanding, the proportions are perfect. 21mm bracelet perfectly balances the 41mm head of the piece. Very comfortable due to the flat sapphire crystal in the screw down exhibition case back. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. It looks like C3 Superluminova, but it's slightly lighter, so I think they may have mixed in some C1, which is white Superluminova, and the white C1 mixed into C3 will give it a lighter green tone. This looks like C3 Superluminova, but on the applied indices it has a slightly brighter tone to it, which indicates that they may have also mixed in some C1 to give it more of an exciter. So I think that the Lume is very good. On the applied indices, the Arabic numerals and also the baton hands, one can clearly differentiate between the shorter hour hand and the longer minute hand. The only thing I would like to change about this is the second hand doesn't have a Lume dot on it. And I think it could be further enhanced because one cannot clearly see the silver second hand sweeping around the dial. With a counterweight or a Lume's dot on the sweeping second hand, it would further enhance the piece because it's nice to see the second hand in the dark. The inner rotating bezel has a loomed triangle at 12 o'clock, as you can see, so it's easy to see where the inner rotating bezel position is, so that's good. And it's glowing brightly and it's continuing to glow for a good length of time, so it is good quality C3 superluminova. Right, so let's discuss the movement used, because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So as I've discussed, this Polaris uses the calibre 898E/1, which is an in-house calibre made by Jaeger-LeCoultre at their Le Sentier headquarters in the Vallée de Joux in Switzerland. And it has 30 joules. It runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. Beautifully decorated with blued screws, Coats de Genève on the bridges, and also Coats de Genève on the skeletonized rotor, which is also signed with the Jaeger-LeCoultre brand logo. It has hand winding and hacking, which is used for complications, and it has a 40-hour power reserve, which is perfectly adequate for a daily wear piece. So, really, the only negative to this movement is the lack of COSC certification. Now, as I've discussed, the watch and the movement is subjected to very rigorous testing, 1,000 hours control test, and 6 weeks of thorough testing, temperature and shock resistance, and the accuracy is observed in 6 positions, which does actually exceed COSC chronometer limits, but it's a shame that Jaeger-LeCoultre don't subject their calibers, such as the calibre 898E/1, to COSC chronometer certification, because this movement could comfortably exceed COSC chronometer limits of -4 to +6 seconds per day. I've observed the accuracy of this piece when it's fully wound to its maximum 40 hours, and I'm pleased to report that it's consistently running at +1 second per day, which exceeds COSC chronometer limits of -4 to +6. So, of course, Jaeger-LeCoultre regard their 1,000 hour controlled testing to be superior to COSC, because they observe the movement and the watch double the length of time to the 3 weeks that COSC observe movements, and therefore they regard their 1,000 hour controlled testing to be far superior to COSC, and therefore they don't need to subject the calibers to COSC to prove a point that they are chronometer accurate. But I still think it's a nice touch to get a chronometer which is certified by COSC, and this clearly would meet that criteria, but I just think at this price point, €7,620, it really should come with COSC chronometer certification. Now, with regards to the finishing, this is top tier level finishing to the head of the piece, the bracelet and the clasp, and as it's a brand new unworn 2021 piece, you can see it still has the protective films on the flanks of the case and the tops of the lugs, but I can tell you that the quality of the finishing to the head of this piece throughout is 10 out of 10. This is top tier. This is Holy Trinity level finishing throughout. Absolutely flawless. Brush satin finish to the flanks and brush satin finish to the tops of the lugs beautifully complement the brush satin finish to the centre sections of the H-link bracelet. So it really is incredible finishing, and it just does justify the price point of this being a high tier piece at €7,620. Right, so lastly I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So €7,620 is the high tier price point of this piece. Yes, it is excellent quality. Now, I base that upon the quality of the movements. The calibre 898E/1 is a reliable, well-proven, excellent quality movement. The movement alone is reason to purchase this piece. It is an outstanding in-house calibre from Jaeger-LeCoultre. The quality control, the finishing, the build quality, the quality of materials, the specification is very strong. But however, there are 2 weak points in the specification which are disappointing. The lack of a screw-down crown is a major disappointment. 100 metres of water resistance is a major disappointment. And to have a caseback which is screwed down by 4 screws but not a conventional screw-down crown, it doesn't provide 200 metres or 300 metres of hermetic seal. So really, I think that Jaeger-LeCoultre should upgrade the Polaris specification and add a screw-down crown to give it 200 metres or 300 metres of water resistance, upgrade the caseback to a conventional screw-down caseback, and I would also like to see a 120 click unidirectional ratcheting mechanism added to the internal bidirectional friction rotating bezel, because it is easy to knock it out of position when one brushes against the crown, as you can see. So there's room for improvements. I would describe the quality as good. The value I would also describe as good, because bear in mind, this is a €7,620 piece, but one is getting Holy Trinity level finishing to the head of the piece and the bracelet and the clasp. This is Patek Philippe level finishing, so at €7,620, yes, the quality of the piece is excellent, but I think that it's let down by the specification, which really needs to be upgraded. 100 metres of water resistance at €7,620 is not acceptable in 2021. Now, the original piece, the Memovox Polaris from 1968, had 200 metres of water resistance, and that's ironic because usually one would expect it to be the other way around, the 1968 version of the piece, the Memovox Polaris, to have 100 metres and this to have 200 metres, because generally speaking, brands progress with specification in time rather than degress. So I think that this should have 200 to 300 metres of water resistance at this price point, but that's something to bear in mind. So I'm going to recommend it to you for your consideration, but bear in mind the specification shortcomings. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Jaeger-LeCoultre Polaris. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.